What's happening, fam? John here from AF Anime, back again with another Dragon Ball related video, this time continuing the playlist for the Dragon Ball movies. And in this video, I'm going to be doing 4 reviews instead of 3 as per usual, because doing 4 in this one video would actually neatly wrap up the Z era films. And the 4 films I'm going to be reviewing in today's video are going to be Broly, The Second Coming, Bio Broly, Fusion Reborn, and Wrath of the Dragon. So with that being said, if you aren't familiar with this playlist and my format for how I do these reviews, I'll typically do a quick recap or a quick summary of what goes down in the plot for each movie and give you my thoughts on each one of them, and then at the end of this video I will rank all of the movies included from best to worst. And of course, the final ratings of each of my videos on this playlist is going to be included in my final video for this playlist, which will include a fully ranked list for every Dragon Ball movie that has ever been released. So now, without any further ado, I'll go ahead and get into the first movie that I'll be reviewing for this video, and that's going to be Dragon Ball Z Broly Second Coming. And I'll go ahead and summarize the events of this movie. Basically, Broly survives the events of the last one by a Saiyan space pod saving him right before the planet explodes. Conveniently, that space pod takes him to Earth where he crash lands, and then after falling out of the space pod, he freezes for 7 years, which conveniently fills the gap of time for the last movie and this one, which takes place around the Buu Saga. And this movie actually starts off in the same way that most Dragon Ball movies starts off, with a hunt for the Dragon Balls. This time the hunt is being done by Videl, Goten, and Trunks, who are actually a rather likable team while entertaining us for the first portion of this movie. And while they're in search of the last Dragon Ball, which of course is the 4-star Dragon Ball, they happen across this village who is conveniently going through a scenario that seems to be very prevalent in Japanese lore, or at the very least Japanese anime and manga, where a young girl is going to be sacrificed for the sake of saving an entire village, and the heroes show up to intervene. Now, the sacrifices have been going to a large dinosaur, which of course Goten and Trunks put down rather quickly, and then they celebrate with the village people by having a feast and then going to sleep. Now, Goten's cries at an earlier point in the movie woke Broly, and he found his way to where the trio is. Videl encountered him first, and he put the hands to her pretty quick. Goten and Trunks eventually showed up to the scene, went Super Saiyan, but still couldn't put down Broly whatsoever. And although they did manage to give us an entertaining fight, they were absolutely no match for Broly, who was just putting hands to them for the entire first half of the movie. And conveniently though, throughout this fight, Goten did locate the final Dragon Ball, but was unsuccessful in summoning Shenron. My assumption for this is that because he was indoors or in a cave when he tried to summon Shenron for the first time in this movie. So the ass whooping continues. Eventually Gohan does show up to save the day, but ultimately he has a lot of trouble dealing with Broly. He does, however, outsmart Broly for a short period of time and manages to get him steeped or sunk into lava. Now, Gohan is oddly satisfied with this result and passes out on a rock while lava is about to engulf him and kill him. But as per usual, Piccolo does show up to save the day, but surprise, surprise, it's actually just Krillin in Piccolo's outfit. And to continue the trend of Piccolo getting beat up in every single Dragon Ball movie, Krillin actually steps in to take his place for that trope and wears his outfit while doing so. In any case, Gohan continues to pick up the fight, but is getting increasingly rolled up by Broly, even with the help of Goten and Trunks occasionally. But the struggle continues until eventually they get a brother's Kamehameha trying to fend off Broly, who actually has the upper hand. And in Goten's mind, he wishes that Goku was there to help, and the Dragon Balls apparently seem to hear him in his mind, and they do summon Goku for a short period of time so we can get this classic scene of a father-son Kamehameha with Goten, Trunks, and Goku. So Broly actually gets destroyed in the same way that Cooler does, by being sent into the sun. And then, as per usual, this movie ends on a lighthearted note with Goten and Trunks skipping off into the distance and Videl chasing after Gohan in a very goofy manner. So we will talk more about that movie later, but now let's move on to the next one in line, which is the Bio Broly movie. And man, I gotta say that of all the Dragon Ball movies that I've watched or rewatched so far, this one I actually remember the least. Heck, after watching it, I even realized that I did not remember at all how Bio Broly was actually even set up. The only thing that really stuck in my mind was his character design for the final fight. But I digress for now. Let's talk about the plot real quick, and it boils down to an old friend and rival of Hercules calling out to him to challenge him with these newly developed bio warriors that he and his team of scientists have invested time and energy into building. This rival of Hercules is known as Mr. Jaguar, and he basically wants revenge for losing against Hercule when they were kids, which actually caused him to lose interest in martial arts altogether. And in a bout of plot convenience, Android 18 and Krillin and Goten and Trunks are actually at Hercule's property, and 18 is harassing him for the money that he promised her for throwing the world tournament. And as one of Mr. Jaguar's goons, a guy who has kind of comedic interest, shows up and invites Hercule to this tournament, he actually manages to convince him to go with the threat of revealing the fact that he peed himself all the way up until the 6th grade. Naturally, Android 18, Goten, and Trunks tag along for the sake of her getting her money, and Goten and Trunks for the sake of fighting these bio warriors. They arrive on the island, and basically some hilarious conversation and hijinks occur, but it ultimately boils down to Android 18 and Goten and Trunks acting like Hercule's pupils and fighting on his behalf for the sake of money, or money at least for Android 18, and Goten and Trunks just wanted to challenge the bio warriors. Now the 3Z warriors deal with these bio warriors fairly quickly, and then the trump card is called out. And in another fit of plot convenience, it turns out the priest from the last movie actually came across Broly's ship, and when he did, the blood inside of the ship was intact enough for him to collect a sample and then sell to Mr. Jaguar, who was in the process of creating bio warriors. So thus we get a Broly clone. And as far-fetched as that already is, it gets even weirder because as soon as clone Broly is released, he is covered in this goo, which actually turns him into this Super Saiyan swamp monster kind of thing. And the fight continues from then on, with Goten and Trunks putting up a good fight and actually getting the upper hand in most occasions, but Trunks keeps getting beat up because Goten keeps flying off to save people from the overrunning goo that is essentially eating up everything living that it touches. Android 18 tries to jump in every now and then, but gets handled pretty easily. Krillin even shows up for a short period of time to save Android 18, and then he also gets handled. The fight goes on for a bit, with the Bio Broly overpowering a lot of the characters, and each of them taking turns saving each other. Everything from Goten saving Trunks, Trunks saving Goten, Hercule saving the group, Android 18 saving Trunks, Krillin saving 18. I mean, it just goes back and forth for a while. Ultimately, Broly is defeated in a fairly unique fashion, for Dragon Ball at least, when Trunks uses his brain to figure out a way to get Broly ingested by all of this goo, which is now overflowing throughout the entire island. This, for the most part, actually is successful, and after a couple villain jump scares, Krillin, Goten, Trunks, and Android 18 save everyone on the island, the scientists included, and then we are treated to one final jump scare as Broly shows up in a giant monster form and is quickly subdued by water, or seawater, turning him into stone. After Broly is dealt with, they still have the threat of the goo, which is expanding beyond the island, and as the scientists say, it is going to encompass the entire world. But as the seawater seems to halt it, Goten, Trunks, and Krillin all power up and use Kamehameha waves to douse the island and stop the threat. Of course, once again, the movie ends on some lighthearted laughs, but now let's move on to the next movie, which is Fusion Reborn. Alright, so I just got done rewatching Fusion Reborn, and it is pretty much exactly as I remember it. If I recall correctly, this movie is actually the one I have seen the most because it was the very first Dragon Ball movie DVD I'd ever gotten my hands on. Now, this movie takes place after Goku and Majin Buu have their first fight, but before the events of the Buu saga were concluded. Now, this movie, in comparison to the last two, has a lot going for it, but I'll talk more about that during the rankings. But for now, I'll go ahead and quickly summarize the plot for you guys. It basically starts off with King Yama doing his daily work and siphoning people into heaven or hell accordingly. And it turns out if you go to hell, there is a kind of spiritual washing machine that rinses the evil out of you and contains it in these jars. And one of these jars gets too full because the Oni, who's responsible for actually changing the jars out, is too busy with his headset to pay attention to his actual job. And once this jar overfills and bursts, that Oni is turned into the villain of the movie, Janemba. Now, Janemba is a powerful character who has the ability to manipulate spiritual barriers, and he does so, and the spiritual barriers that he creates around King Yama and all throughout the other world creates problems for people not only in the other world, but also in the real world. Now, we are treated to a few comedic scenes with a bunch of dead people coming back to life. So in terms of the real world, Gohan, Videl, Goten, and Trunks all head off to handle the situation on Earth. And it basically comes down to them fighting zombies. Frieza does does show up for a quick moment, but Gohan quickly dispatches him, and then you see the people who were following him eventually spread out and take off. Gohan and Videl continue to dispatch some zombies. Trunks and Goten actually take on Nazi zombies a good 10 plus years before Call of Duty ever thought of using Nazi zombies in one of their game modes. So after Frieza's death, a good amount of the stuff that goes down during the real world is mainly for comedy, as Goku, Pikkon, and Vegeta take the center stage in the other world to fight Janemba. And at first, Goku is the only one to take on Janemba in his large form, and the fight goes on for a bit, with Janemba actually pulling off some pretty smart or some pretty cool moves that catch Goku off guard. Goku eventually goes through most of his transformations, eventually getting to Super Saiyan 3 before getting handled by Janemba in his regular form. And while all this is going down, Pikkon apparently is breaking this spiritual barrier by hurling insults at it, whatever that means. But eventually SS3 Goku gets handled, but before Janemba can finish him off, Vegeta shows up as he's been given his body back due to King Yama needing him to assist in the situation. Vegeta tries his own hand at defeating Janemba, but of course is quickly dispatched. I mean, I'm talking less than 120 seconds of Vegeta fighting Janemba. Now, after Vegeta gets handled, Goku tries to convince him to do fusion, to which at first Vegeta disagrees, but eventually caves in, and after botching the first fusion attempt, they become Veku, which is the fat version of Gogeta. And at this point, we get some hilarious hijinks with Veku and Janemba before Pikkon comes down to assist them while they attempt their second fusion. This time, however, they are successful in forming Gogeta, and at the same time, Trunks and Goten can fill their ki and they too fuse, which gives us the title Fusion Reborn. And then right after these two fusions, the respective enemies are literally handled with the absolute quickness. And then the movie is quickly wrapped up with Vegeta returning to Hell, and then ending with the typical laughing scene of Gohan chasing after Goten and Trunks, who are teasing him about knowing who fixed the problem. Alright, now that'll do it for the recap of Fusion Reborn. And now moving on to the final animated film of the Z era, and that's going to be Dragon Ball Z Wrath of the Dragon. Alright, now I just got done watching the Wrath of the Dragon film, and if I'm not mistaken, I think this is only my second time ever seeing it. But it is a pretty good movie, but more on its strong points and weak points during the rankings. For now, I'll get on with the plot, and I'll change it up because the backstory isn't actually revealed to the middle of the movie. So I'll start off with the backstory that introduces the new characters. So the new protagonist for the film is named Tapion, and it turns out that he is from the past on a planet called Konuts, and on this planet there was actually a cult of warlocks who summoned up all of the ill will on the planet and then shoved it into this giant statue, which eventually became the big bad of this film, which is named Hildegarn in the subs and Harudegarn in the dubs. Now, after this creature is created, it immediately goes on a giant killing spree, jacking up the entire planet. But for some reason, when they created this monster, they also created two ocarinas, or two flutes, as well as a sword, which could contain this monster's power. No idea why they would do something so dumb, but Tapion, his younger brother, and a sword-wielding priest get a hold of these items and then use it to cut Hildegarn in half, and as well as seal each half in one of the two siblings. After that, the three are hailed as heroes, but unfortunately, the two halves of Hildegarn being near each other causes a resonation which only increases the likelihood of his escape. So the two brothers seal themselves away and have themselves shipped off to two opposite ends of the galaxy, with the hero Tapion ending up on Earth. Now, he spends a very long time on Earth sealed away in this music box before one of the warlocks, Hoi, shows up on Earth and then tries to get the music box open. This leads to the beginning of the movie. Aside from Tapion's younger brother getting squished to death, Gohan and Videl are doing their typical Saiyaman saving the day bit. They go back to school before they're called again for a attempted suicide. But it's actually just that warlock Hoi who is trying to bait Gohan into showing up, because somehow he knows that Gohan and his friends have had dealings with Shenlong, or Shenron, the wish-granting dragon. And out of sheer curiosity, Gohan takes him to Bulma's place, where Goku and others try to get the box open to no avail. So what they do is we have a quick Dragon Ball searching montage, as you do in the Dragon Ball movies, and after acquiring all of the Dragon Balls, they summon Shenlong and he easily opens the box. Tapion does get released from the box, but immediately berates the Z Warriors for releasing him, not knowing the dangers that are involved. So he sulks off angrily to go be on his own, and for some reason Trunks idolizes this guy and views him as an older brother, and even spends a good deal of the movie bringing him food and trying to befriend him. And during this time, there is an incident with the lower half of Hirudegan going on a kaiju spree and destroying a good part of a city. Gohan and Videl shows up, and Gohan tries to take the initiative to solve the problem, but is not successful. He does manage to get some hits in before it vanishes, but we do go back to Tapion, who falls asleep and drops his ocarina or his flute, and the upper half comes through a portal and tries to attack him. He regains his flute quickly though, and manages to play it fast enough to keep the monster from doing any real damage. After this, the evil warlock Hoi, who slipped off after the dragon was summoned, shows back up with some new ninja skills and manages to knock the flute away from Tapion. He then tries to trick Trunks into giving him the flute, but Trunks doesn't fall for it, which causes him and Tapion to start bonding. Discount Link then tags along with Trunks back to his house, where Bulma tries to build a contraption to help him get some sleep and contain Hildegarn. This doesn't work though, and Hildegarn is released in his full form, much to Hoi's approval. Goku, Gohan, Goten, and Trunks all power up with the intent to stop the monster, but really can't lay a hand on it. I guess because its full form is faster and stronger and much more proficient at using its vanishing technique. So Goku and the other Z Warriors take turns getting bodied by this giant kaiju, and we even see Gotenks for a short period of time, who actually does do a little bit of damage to the monster before it powers up and upgrades and transforms into a new form. Upgraded Godzilla deals with Gotenks pretty quickly, and then Vegeta shows up for all of about maybe 10 seconds and gets bodied with the absolute quickness, and then he passes out. Tapion then shows up and manages to seal Hildegarn away for a short period of time, and then asks young Trunks to kill him with his sword so that way he can go down with the monster. Of course, an 8-year-old child hesitates to behead someone he idolizes, and then the monster gets free again. Trunks uses the sword and actually manages to cut off Hildegarn's tail before Goku gets up and says, "Don't get involved, I'll take care of this." And he does. He uses a move called Ryuken, which is one of the more flashy techniques that we get to see Goku use, and in doing this move, he defeats Hildegarn pretty quickly. The movie ends with Bulma building Tapion a machine to go back to his own time, and before he is sent off, he gives Trunks the sword, which has become iconic to him slicing up Frieza when he's first introduced. And that is going to wrap up the plot summary. Now we can go ahead and get on with the rankings for all 4 of these movies. So I'm going to rank these movies from worst to best, starting with number 4, which is obviously going to be Bio Brawly. And apparently I'm not alone in that assertion, because I looked up multiple lists in order to stay accurate to the release order for these movies, and on occasion I came across ratings for the movies, and this one was almost unanimously the lowest rated in terms of the animated movies. And rightfully so. There's a lot of things about this movie that I genuinely just didn't enjoy. It's entertaining, sure, it's not a bad movie, but it's just not a good one. For example, the whole concept behind Bio Brawly being a clone and a swamp monster of sorts just was really far-fetched and didn't really serve to fulfill the role of a proper Dragon Ball villain. Also, the sheer plot convenience revolving around how the Z Warriors get involved in this incident also seems to be a bit of a stretch as well. Now, that is not to say that this movie doesn't have some good points. For one, I enjoyed the fact that we didn't see Goku, Vegeta, Gohan, or Piccolo show up to save the day. This situation was handled by the likes of Goten, Trunks, Krillin, and Android 18. And that was a pretty refreshing twist when it comes to Dragon Ball movies and their formula. But when it comes to this movie's comedy, it actually is pretty good. We get Hercule, who's always a good source of funny scenes and funny material, especially in the sub version. He does serve a good purpose, even manages to help save the day to some extent, but ultimately those good aspects weren't enough to make this movie good. If they had extended the runtime by a good 15 or 20 minutes and then intermixed the concept of Goku, who was teased at the end to be set up to fight Brawly in the other world, if they had done those two things side by side with the main storyline, it could have worked out. So that is why Bio Brawly gets the number 4 spot for this video. Number 3 is going to go to Brawly Second Coming. And while it is definitely better than Bio Brawly, there are some things working for and against this story in particular. For one, I didn't like the whole concept of how Brawly was brought back. The fact that he should have died on that planet that exploded, his spaceship saved him and programmed itself to fly to Earth, and then he's just magically sealed away for 7 years without the threat of dying, freezing to death, dying of starvation, or even dying of thirst. And then there's the aspect of him being sealed to the point of preservation, but still being able to hear Goten cry, which triggers him to release himself from his prison. I mean, to me, that just seems like lazy writing. There's also the way the movie ended, where the Dragon Balls, I guess, heard Goten's mental wish for Goku to be there to help out, and then Goku just shows up for a father-son Kamehameha, which is just conveniently an epic moment that really just seemed like fan service or even a marketing opportunity for posters or video game moves. But again, as I said with the last one, there are some good aspects to this movie aside from the action. We do get a fun story when it comes to Videl, Trunks, and Goten in the beginning of this movie and how the plot is set up. Now, I don't know if this is just a moment of good writing when it comes to this movie's plot or just the chemistry between Videl, Trunks, and Goten, but I found their adventure a bit more entertaining than some of the setup stories that we got from all of the Dragon Ball movies previously. Alright, now we can move on to number 2 for this list, which is going to be Wrath of Dragon. And this one is a close runner-up as I found it almost on par with Fusion Reborn, but there are a couple things that kind of annoyed me about the movie, but for the most part it is pretty good. Now, as far as the good things about this movie, its pacing feels uncommonly good in comparison to the other Dragon Ball movies that I've reviewed so far. The story feels properly stretched out, the backstory is kind of spaced out throughout the movie to keep you in a little bit of mystery and keep you guessing about what's actually going on, and I think that was executed very well. We get some emotional scenes also when it comes to Trunks and his relationship with Tapion, and we even get a satisfactory explanation as to why Trunks has that sword. But as I said, there are a couple things about this movie that I don't like. For one, the near instant ending with Goku using his Ryukin move to pretty much instantly obliterate this big threat or this phantasm which has the ability to disappear and reappear at will. And when it comes to the character designs and the whole concept with the ocarinas and swords, it kind of gave me a feel that one of the writers, or possibly even one of the people who helped create Trunks, was a big fan of the Legend of Zelda series and felt they needed to incorporate that into the story. Ultimately, the good things about this movie heavily outweigh the bad things, but it's for those reasons that I'm ultimately going to give the number 1 spot for these 4 movies to Dragon Ball Z Fusion Reborn. Now, I wouldn't call Fusion Reborn a good movie, but it is entertaining and it manages to feel like a good time. I can only imagine how fun it must have been to see this movie in theaters when it first came out. For one, we have the dual stories going on with the regular world, Gohan, Goten, Videl and them dealing with the zombies, the Nazi zombies, and the resurrected villains. For one, the moment with Gohan destroying Frieza was probably one of my favorite Gohan moments of all time. And while all this is going on, we have Goku, Pikkon, and Vegeta dealing with the situation in the other world with Janemba and King Yama. Now, I wouldn't say that this narrative was as smooth and as well done as the Wrath of Dragon movie, but it was incredibly entertaining. We even get some new aspects of animation that we haven't seen before in the Dragon Ball universe when it comes to cell shading and some of the attack techniques that we get to see from Janemba. And I don't think I can even argue with how epic Gogeta's entrance to the series is. My only issues with this movie mainly have to do with how fast Gogeta dispatched of Janemba, and I understand that the character is overpowered and was probably meant to be so far beyond Janemba. It just seems like it ended very quickly. And another issue that I can find with this movie is the flimsy way that the villain is set up. The concept when it comes to King Yama and his role within the Dragon Ball universe is fine and all, but it just seems kind of stupid that he would be sorting people into heaven and hell, and then the people he sends to hell he washes the evil out of before sending them down there. Not only does this not make sense, but it also comes across as a bit cruel because what you're doing is washing the evil out of these people and then sending them to hell as pure souls. And another thing I think they missed out on was the opportunity to bring back more characters with a little more dialogue like Raditz or Nappa or people like that. But my grievances aside, it was a fun movie that had a great amount of action and very entertaining action. And at the same time, we get some meaningful and thoughtful moments with Vegeta and his interactions with Goku. And of course, we get the reveal of Gogeta, who is one of the most iconic and memorable characters within the Dragon Ball universe. And so it is for those reasons that Dragon Ball Z Fusion Reborn takes the number 1 spot out of these 4 Dragon Ball movies. So that is going to do it for this review video. It's already gone on long enough, so if you're still here, thank you very much for watching the video. The playlist is going to continue. The next 2 movies, however, I will do standalone videos for because they are a bit different from the other Dragon Ball movies. The first of which is going to be Dragon Ball Path of Power, and that is a Dragon Ball movie officially, but it is a good deal different, so it warrants its own video. The second is going to be Dragon Ball Evolution. Lord knows I don't want to do it, but I'm going to have to rewatch that video for you guys so that way I can put it here in the Dragon Ball movie review list. But be certain that when I do that review, I will not be gentle, and I will find the ethnic restaurant with the lowest rated health reviews, so that way I can take a proper dump on that movie the way it should be. But again, thank you guys very much for watching this video. Be sure to check out the earlier videos in this playlist if you want to see my reviews on the other Dragon Ball Z era movies. And if you enjoyed this content, be sure to like, share, and subscribe if you want to keep up with this playlist and more anime related content. Once again, my name is John from AF Anime. I'll see you guys in the next video.